like me, you are a Little Black Star or an Avril-ologist, then you'll know that Avril's fan base are pretty furious with her right now. She's just debuted a flop greatest hits tour with a less than 90-minute set, including 2 songs that no one cares about, snubbing fan favorites, despite catfishing us as calling this her greatest hits tour. She's also criminally, and most criminally, chosen to ignore the 20-year anniversary of her fan favorite second album, Under My Skin. One of the most frustrating parts of being an Avril Lavigne fan is trying to appreciate her work when the artist herself DGAF about it. She basically had to be flamed into celebrating Let Go, and even the remastered version of it leaves a lot to be desired. But what does Under My Skin get? Nothing. Not even an Instagram post. So since Avril has chosen to all but ignore this gorgeous celebratory day, I'm gonna do it for her. This is my elegy to Under My Skin. Avril Lavigne was a truly formative artist. I would not be the Swiftologist today that I am without her, and Under My Skin really sparked my joy for analyzing and understanding music in a completely different way, as an 8-year-old, shall I say. As you can tell when I do a video essay, I really commit to the bit. This is my first time doing eyeliner. Let me know what you thought of my attempt in the comments below. But my name is Zach, I'm the Swiftologist. If you're new here, I make thoughtful weekly videos about pop culture, and if you like turning an analytical lens to things that other people may deem to be, superfluous or silly, then you're in the right place, because that's what I do here all the time. And over 50% of you that watch my videos are not subscribed, so let's rectify that, shall we? So 20 years ago, Avril Lavigne unleashed her darkest record. By pop standards, it was a bruising heel turn from the sunnier, more digestible angst on her blockbuster debut album, Let Go. This record contains a few career highlights, My Happy Ending, Don't Tell Me, and Nobody's Home, but it also asserts itself as the most cogent and concise statement in Avril's middling catalog. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Avril Lavigne fan, but judging by her output post The Best Damn Thing, she misses more swings than she lands. Under My Skin kind of picks up in the shadows of Let Go. When Avril was writing the first record, she had wanted to make an entire album that sounded like 2 unnerving songs that made it to the official track list. The final single, Losing Grip, and the deep cut, Unwanted. In her mind, this was her sound. Arista was drop dead afraid that I would come out with a whole album like Unwanted and Losing Grip, she told Rolling Stone in an interview at the time. I swear they wanted to drop me. And so, a compromise. Avril's label, Arista, secured a pop-oriented production trio called The Matrix to rein in their wayward Canadians. She played them Unwanted and Losing Grip and requested more of the same. Their first session resulted in 2 songs, one of which was Complicated, an irresistible bluesy earworm, and fatefully her Pot of Gold. I'm sure you're familiar with it. As curators, The Matrix tamed the unwieldy angst put forward on Unwanted and Losing Grip, then transmuted it into something palatable and adult enough to go the distance. On Complicated, Avril's frustration is palpable. Her cadence is staccato and her tone is pugnacious. It's kind of everything that Avril is when she's at her very best in one song. Avril and The Matrix wrote 10 songs for Let Go, half of which made it to the final track list, and 3 are her crowning jewels: Complicated, Skater Boy, and the incredible power ballad, I'm With You. The final track list is uneven, but it's spirited. She raps and screams and croons and yearns from a liminal space. It's organized chaos. When we think of Avril Lavigne, these are the songs that immediately come to mind. How daring then that she turned away from them, these hitmakers, for her sophomore record, an occasion in a new artist's career so often marked with the curse of a slump, especially following a blockbuster debut. Avril chose to wade further into the feral, muddy waters of late adolescence instead. Avril's authenticity was questioned from the jump. It's clear that label intervention definitely helped propel Avril to stardom, but that never stopped her from being true to herself. At photo shoots, she refused to wear clothes that weren't her own and would not let anyone else touch her makeup or remove her signature eyeliner.
I hate it when people do my makeup. I get so annoyed. I know how I want it. They're my eyes. I know where I want it and how I want it to go. I don't let anybody touch my hair. People just want to rip it and break it and fry it and stay away.
She had a remarkable agency for a girl of her age in that time, the early 2000s, when the American imagination post 9/11 was, decidedly resilient, happy again, or so the pop stars kept telling us. So long, Alanis, Bon Voyage, Jules, sexy sunny fembots like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera were delivered to varying levels of success, plotted along the Maiden to Magdalene pipeline. But Avril was different. She was disinterested in that kind of pop stardom. Unlike her contemporaries, she seldom smiled. She was not grateful for having a big hit at the time, Complicated, or for her fans who liked her so much they copied her style and bought her gifts. She thought that was weird. She also thought that boys were annoying, gross, and boring, and they should not be pandered to. Avril correctly identified early on in her career that her appeal to her audience was in her authenticity. Though critics, often male and from a place of misogyny, I feel, attacked and questioned Avril's involvement in her own output, she knew that the choices she was making that weren't popular with the suits in the industry, for example, rejecting the sexy sunny fembot prescription and instead wearing boys' clothes essentially, created her unique appeal.
L.A. Reid really got me. He's like, you have like your own thing going on. Like normally we'd have like stylists and all this people come in and like you'd find your image. He's like, you have your own thing going on. Do what you're doing. And I was like, I had no idea what he meant, but I was like, does this mean I get to keep wearing baggy clothes? And like, I didn't totally know how to articulate myself, but other than just expressing to them while they were producing, and I'm sitting there staring at the screen and being in the studio for the first time, and I just kept being like, just make it sound more like a band. Just like make it sound more like a band. Like, and it's like more guitars and just like drums, and I just was trying to edge everything up as much as possible. I wanted to rock.
She knew that there were other girls out there who needed someone like Avril, a guy's girl with occasional pick-me energy, who wore combat boots and cargo pants and occasionally felt inclined to smash things up. Under My Skin is, to me, definitive proof that Avril's earlier work was a design of her own making, beating the industry plant allegations once and for all. Why do I think that? Well, because in the wake of her success and the massive reception to her brighter and poppier, more straightforward hits on Let Go, she decided to double down on the vision she really had for that first album and was not allowed to pursue. Let Go was ultimately a compromised project, partly a concession to the adults with keys to the castle, who were too afraid to let her rock out fully. With that record under her belt and a legion of loyal fans who would follow her wherever in place, Avril had more bargaining power when it came to creating this record, but still, she was crafting under pressure. Avril had only about 6 months between the end of tour and the release of Under My Skin to write the record, and she said that her label made her put it out before she was ready. A last-minute addition, almost missed by this unreasonable deadline, was the album's most enduring hit, My Happy Ending. Avril wanted that to be the first single, but the label insisted on Don't Tell Me instead. And guess what charted better and sold more copies? You should listen to your female artist record labels. What I admire most about Avril in this earlier stage of her career, though, is her flexibility. She'll take notes from the powers that be, but at the end of the day, it is her choice to compromise when and if she does. She has never portrayed herself as a victim of her label or her handlers. Here's what she said in hindsight about, having to maybe make decisions or make concessions like with Skater Boy, Complicated, and I'm With You that weren't exactly in line with what she wanted at the time. I'm highly intuitive, she said, and I've always got a very strong gut feeling. This interview is from 2019, by the way. I've always known what's best for me to do, and I have had to fight people over the years who tell me that I have to make this or I have to make that and go top 40. You make those songs because you have to, but I wrote them because they're still who I am. It wasn't like people wrote them and gave them to me. It was like, I get it. You want the singles that are going this direction. Fine, I'll work with you on that. You can't be stubborn and do everything your way. When Avril was 19, here's what she had to say about the process of creating Under My Skin, which is very much in line with what she said 20 years later. I'm into darker music and stuff, so I knew that I was going to write my rock songs, but at the same time, I am a pop artist, and radio play is a big thing for me. I knew that I shouldn't go completely in the opposite direction. It's good to have a couple that are easier to listen to or have more elements of the last record on them. So I wrote the pop songs and the ballad, and then I kind of just did what I wanted with the rest of the record. And when you listen to it, you can really kind of tell that that's true. Though the album's marketing is harder, more inscrutable, and intimidating, the emotions on display through these songs are actually quite straightforward and simply relatable to a wide range of listeners. Here are the major themes present on Under My Skin in order of their importance. First of all, number 1, boy bashing, but of course. Number 2, extreme pick-me behavior, aka girl power for me and not for thee. 3, what I've come to describe as commercial female rage. And number 4, general brattiness, the incorrigible teenage angst that defined the millennial generation. Spoiled, self-absorbed main characters who inherited a disintegrating world and expressed that vehemently to each other in person and eventually online. I want to expand on the commercial female rage point that I just brought up because I think it's kind of central to any discussion of Avril as an artist. I think Avril was a gateway drug for a lot of young people to harder expressions of discontent and female rage. I personally feel that I was primed in taste and sensibility for my later obsessions with female ragers of many colors: Taylor Swift, Lana Del Rey, Hole, and Sky Ferreira. Avril is often compared to Alanis Morissette, who herself was the gateway drug to something harder for young brats in the 90s. However, I think that Avril's display of rage was more muted than hers, less sick and twisted. Avril, for example, has never pontificated in song on someone else's perversion. In fact, she's really conservative, as we see plenty throughout Under My Skin, and Avril was just generally more disaffected. Part of Avril's appeal to me, especially as a young boy — I was 8 when this record came out, and it defined the very early years of my life — was that she simply didn't care. Sure, she caterwauled and threw her fist in the air occasionally, but she kind of never really went all the way there. She stopped just short of actually smashing up her guitar, and if she did, it was a prop guitar for a music video. She wouldn't disrespect her treasured Fenders like that. She was a professional musician who wanted to be on the radio, after all. At the end of her noisemaking, Avril reverted back to a blank stare. On stage, she is a compelling presence because it often feels like she's not really there. There is a charged blankness to her, a general and indefinite surliness. Some people think that this is boring. I find it very magnetic and captivating to see on stage. What's interesting about this kind of reticence to really take it to a place of uncomfortable rage, the kind of rage that would make parents stop buying her albums for their children, for example, was was not, in my opinion, a decision that was imposed upon her by foreboding record labels. You can see how that train of thought, that Avril wasn't really punk and was in fact a poser, led straight to the she's an industry plant with no thoughts of her own train of thinking. But Avril has always been very interested in being popular. It's as an authentic desire to her as boy bashing is. I don't think she consciously stopped herself from writing more shocking lyrics and using more expletives or trashing hotel rooms on a more regular basis. I think Avril's goal was to rock out, be heard on the radio, and then chill out afterwards. Here's what she said again when she was promoting this record. I want to be played on the radio. I want to have top 40 hits. I want people to hear my music. I like it when they come to my shows, and if they don't know my record, they know a few songs, because they've been on the radio. I like that. As far as young pop stars go, Avril's actually always been fairly straight-laced. You'll see her to this day recoiling at explicit conversations. In the Call Her Daddy interview with Alex Cooper, she was asked about sex, and she made it very clear that she's never been that kind of girl to just have random affairs. She's always been in long-term relationships. She also grew up singing in a church in a small Canadian town to two very conservative Christian parents. It's kind of ironic in a sense that Avril became a sort of countercultural mainstream-ish movement because of her prudishness, not because she was actually countercultural. Avril's refusal to dress sexy and sing about enticing boys was not just about her desire to be an empowered woman, it was a rejection of a certain kind of liberal excess. The lead single off Under My Skin quite plainly states this motivation for her. She defines herself as literally not that kind of girl. Singing to a guy who's trying to get in her pants after a first date, she cautions him, "Did I not tell you that I'm not like that girl, the one who gives it all away?" And she delivers this line with not a small amount of derision. Implied in "I'm not like that girl who gives it all away" is "I'm better than the girl who gives it all away." She offered this advice to Britney and Christina in the promo cycle for Under My Skin as well. It's embarrassing the way some of these girls dress and show off their bodies. Don't give that to guys. Very girl power for me and not for thee. Let's get into the record, shall we? I want to start with the name, Under My Skin. Again, this wasn't handed to her. Avril came up with it herself, and it's not the title of a song on the record. She thought about calling it Inside of My Head, but felt that Under My Skin was stickier. So true, Queen. Great decision. She said it was about what bugs her, what's inside of her, and we definitely see a vast array of anxieties, emotions, and experiences explored throughout this record.
Called the record Under My Skin because that's what I write about, stuff that's there.
The record's called Under My Skin because everything that's there eating away at me.
It's definitely less straightforward or one-dimensional than Let Go. Of course, there's our fairly standard boy bashing on He Wasn't and Don't Tell Me, some semi-fictional writing about a wayward girl on Nobody's Home, and a maudlin, mournful reflection on lost love with more sadness than anger on My Happy Ending, Together, and Fall to Pieces. She also explores a very rudimentary existential angst on How Does It Feel and the loss of her grandfather on Slipped Away. I think the extremely tight timeline that this record was made on actually does it a disservice. With 12 standard tracks and a total runtime of 40 minutes, there aren't that many outtakes from the Under My Skin writing sessions because pretty much all the ground she covered was slapped onto the record. I think you can also tell with this album versus Let Go that there were less options to choose from when creating the final track list. However, I still overall prefer this record because I think the highs are truly astronomical and I really love its vision. Speaking of its vision, Under My Skin is really effective as an era. It has a very clear point of view, aesthetic, and creative direction. This is largely, of course, due to Avril's involvement in the process. There's a new circle of collaborators all over this record. Can you believe that an artist like Avril Lavigne, with incredible success on her debut record, would not invite her prior collaborators, songwriting trio Hitmakers, The Matrix, co-authors of Skater Boy, I'm With You and Complicated, back for round 2 into the fold? Well, believe it, because she didn't. Avril very intentionally did not want to work with professional writers, and I take this to mean that she didn't want to work with hitmakers like The Matrix, whom the label had definitely pushed her to collaborate with on Let Go. On her first world tour, Avril developed a relationship with Chantal Kreviazuk, I cannot pronounce her last name so I won't be saying it again, whose husband's band opened for Avril's shows in Europe. Chantal and Avril met for lunch in the summer of 2003, where Avril stressed her desire for a more organic writing process. The two wrote together for almost 3 weeks at a warehouse in Toronto.
Everyone I worked with closely on this record were like friends of mine, like Evan, it's like one of my best friends, Chantal Kreviazuk.
This relationship would eventually sour as Chantal accused Avril of plagiarism in 2007 of a song called Contagious on The Best Damn Thing, the follow-up to Under My Skin, which she quickly retracted and publicly apologized for. It's kind of interesting that Avril has a history of her collaborators. The Matrix did this too, especially in her earlier career, turning on her and accusing her of not actually writing her songs, and then they always end up retracting it. I can only imagine that it was, in fact, profitable, either monetarily or through press attention, to insinuate that Avril was a fraud. That kind of criticism was ongoing and has never really escaped her. Anyway, during this writing process, the two complemented each other on their various writing styles. Chantal said, "Avril has instincts I had never seen before. I learn from her because we think differently. I think with my head, and she thinks with her gut."
This time, I took control over picking my producers and, working closely with them and just really, really hands-on with everything. And I'm old enough, so I know what I want, and it was really a good chance for me to be able to get what I wanted.
Chantal's husband produced a lot of the great work on Under My Skin, including album Deep Cut and Highlight Fall to Pieces. The production work had a pretty significant instruction from the artist, Avril Lavigne: moodier, darker, and deeper, kind of like Marilyn Manson. What we end up getting is, of course, a very measured and watered down version of that, which is a compliment, not an insult, because it again tamed the unwieldy angst of the music Avril was listening to and distilled it into something a little bit more listenable. The songs that Chantal co-writes on this record are Who Knows, Forgotten, How Does It Feel, Together, He Wasn't, and Slipped Away. For the record, only one of those songs was an actual single on the album, so don't overestimate your contributions, Queen. I don't see your credits on Don't Tell Me, My Happy Ending, or Nobody's Home. Avril mentioned in several interviews that if one producer doesn't get her vision for a song, she'll simply take it to someone else. This is a theme that we've seen from her over and over. It happened on Let Go too. Yet another FU to those who say she has no involvement in her creative process. It's actually really hard to find any information regarding Butch Walker's contributions to Under My Skin, which are super important because he produced Don't Tell Me and My Happy Ending, the inarguable biggest hits on the record, but generally he describes himself as a more relaxed producer who responds to what the artist wants. His production style is, in his own description, a bit messy. He doesn't like to tune every vocal or perfect every snare. There is a very live element to what he does, and we hear that all over Under My Skin. This is a great segue to talk about the hits from Under My Skin. The first single was the legendary Don't Tell Me. Avril's Pick Me and Screw You anthem. This was the debut of her new sound and a semi-new look. She was grungier, but also somehow more polished at the same time. With slightly blonder hair streaked with black, the opening shot has her showing more skin than ever before, ironically, and wearing pink, sitting on her bed with a signature smoky eye and black liner with a skull and crossbones on her knee-high socks. It's a pretty simple video, but it introduces a slightly more grown-up version of Avril and reorients her female rage. She's smashing glasses, pulling the bedclothes off of the bed, furiously strumming an acoustic and then an electric guitar. It was directed by Liz Friedlander, who also directed videos for Kelly Clarkson, Ashley Simpson, Avril imitators for sure, and Alanis Morissette. You can actually see traces of this video's influence in Olivia Rodrigo's Vampire. That sequence at the end where she's kind of rising above the city is something that happened in Don't Tell Me. I also see a visual reference to Avril in Olivia's music video for Good For You, circling back to He Wasn't. Don't Tell Me is a self-written song, not a co-write, which I think is pretty impressive given that Avril's other solo written efforts have had mixed results. This is what she said about Don't Tell Me. This song is about being strong. There are a lot of guys out there who just want to take you out to dinner and then basically go home and you know what. That's what a lot of guys are like. And I just think that girls need to be strong and not let any guy pressure them into doing anything. I'm happy to have this song, to be able to sing it up on stage every night and to introduce it with, telling the audience that this song is all about being strong and it goes out to all the girls and it feels good to be able to do that.
And they wrote it about, being a chick and being strong. So I think it has a really positive message.
I think it's interesting that this is positioned by Ms. Lavigne as an empowerment anthem. I mean, I guess it's empowering for all of the girls like Avril who weren't stupid enough to let a guy hit it on the first date, but I digress. Avril did not want this to be the first single. Her first choice was My Happy Ending, but the label insisted on Don't Tell Me. And guess what? It was a moderate hit, but nowhere close to complicated. It debuted and peaked at number 22, selling around 500,000 copies. This is still a great success, but I'm sure a slight disappointment for the label. If they had just listened to Avril and gone with My Happy Ending, then I think that things would have turned out differently for the lead single. Critics were immediately suspicious of Avril seeming more burdened on this song, but they felt they couldn't deny the level of craft at work. This is a huge compliment because there were no hit makers involved in this, and it was just Avril and her bandmate and frequent collaborator Evan Taubenfeld. The second single was only released a month after the album came out, to which I say, Arista Records, why did you set my good sis up for failure? The single certainly didn't fail. It peaked at number 9 on the Hot 100 and had a healthy chart run, but we could have been going number 1 with this. It's My Happy Ending, of course. Probably the poppiest song on the album, and thus my eternal favorite.
So much for my happy ending.
Again, because Avril is so non-self-reflective about her own legacy, details on how these songs came to be are kind of few and far between. This song is obviously about a breakup, the curse of nostalgia, and the never-ending pain of a love affair gone awry. This is like the perfect confluence of punk, pop, rock, and Avril's unique capacity as a singer. She's practically shrieking in the chorus, and when that vocal is repeated with such a hooky a chorus over and over, it's such an earworm. These are some of her very best vocals. Butch Walker did an incredible production job on this. The climax and the payoff of the bridge into that final chorus is really iconic. If you've ever seen this live, you get it. It goes crazy.
He was everything that I wanted.
The music video was shot in New York, which really adds kind of to the dilapidated warehouse vibe of the entire visual world that Under My Skin exists in. The video is like a little movie. It shows Avril entering an old, broken-down movie theater where she watches a projection of the highlights of the relationship that didn't work. We see these lovers horsing around the grocery store. He kind of pulls her in at one point, implying what she was talking about on Don't Tell Me. Did you think that I was going to be the one, etc. She gets mad, pushes him away, grabs her guitar, and goes up to the roof to strum it angrily in front of him, then ditches him at a bar with her girlfriends later. Iconic. A very rare non-pick-me moment. Avril's look in this video is one of the most iconic Avril Lavigne visuals. We've got the staples of Avril here: a studded belt, cargo pants, military boots, a raggedy tutu. It's really everything. I see echoes of this visual constantly, especially with Olivia Rodrigo and Billie Eilish, who have both cited Avril as a huge influence on them. This was also an international hit, and I think My Happy Ending is best described as a goth pop anthem. And then we have Avril wading even further into darker territory on the third single from this record, Nobody's Home.
She wants to go home, but nobody's home.
Pick me behavior was put aside for a second because Avril was fascinated by the bad decisions of a wayward girl she knew growing up, by how her life kept seeming to fall apart and reach new lows. So she wrote the song trying to empathize with her life and see things from her point of view. It's definitely written from a place of pity, but I think it's a really effective song actually, and it has some more empathetic lyrics, like her feelings she hides, her dreams she can't find, she's losing her mind, she's falling behind, she can't find her place, she's losing her faith, she's falling from grace, and she's all over the place. I was Twitch streaming about Avril the other day, and we were watching this video, and someone commented that they used to sit in their room at age like 7 or 8 and pretend they were homeless while listening to the song. And girl, same. This single is a moderate success domestically, peaking at number 42 on the Hot 100. What's important to remember about Avril is how global she was at her peak. She's always sold really well in South America and Asia, and I'd say that Asia is where Avril is actually really best celebrated. Avril Mania was so real in Singapore, and it's even more so in Japan. So yes, Avril goes full homeless girl LARP in this video, playing the wayward girl she knew, trying to get picked up, hitchhiking, washing herself in gas station bathrooms, playing guitar on the sidewalk, trying to break into cars to shelter from a stormy night. It's very dark, it's very moody, it's very dramatic, and Avril actually gives a really convincing performance here. Her acting skills, based on her music videos alone, are actually pretty good. She's also wearing a black wig, which is something she loves to do and will do again very shortly on The Best Damn Thing. The final singles from this record differed depending on your region. He Wasn't was the final single internationally, and Fall to Pieces was the final single domestically. Personally, I think that Fall to Pieces was the wrong choice to follow up the already notably down-tempo Nobody's Home, but who am I to say? Bafflingly, the non-US single is the one that got a music video, and you know what? Thank God it did. Let's start with He Wasn't, the non-US single, a post-grunge classic.
He wasn't what I wanted, what I thought, no.
I love this song. It kind of crystallizes everything great about Avril when she's really on form. Fist pumping, jeering at your enemies, being generally superior to the loser men who court you. It gets an iconic semi-low budget music video of Avril Lavigne, newly full blonde, cavorting around a white soundstage with her bandmates, prancing around in a pink tutu with butterfly wings, wearing devil's horns, then finally busting the walls with her guitar, making pink paint pour out all over the set. It's everything. This song was completely slandered by the press, again with the poser allegations. I don't know why anyone couldn't just enjoy Avril's music for what it was, instead of highlighting what it wasn't, real punk music. Avril has never once claimed to be Courtney Love or the harbinger of a new era of punk.
Let's respond to the punk one, because this is a term that gets thrown around in music, and there's some people who resent it, and there's some people who kind of go with it. What is your feeling? Are you punk?
No? Okay, like, last time I was here, you tried to say something like, oh, punk rock Avril Lavigne. I was like, no, I'm not. I just want to say that all that stuff's really annoying, and I don't think that I'm any of those things. And
Look right into that camera
it's
right
just the media, and they don't even know me, and they don't know what they're talking about, so.
It's like I never once ever called myself punk to anybody. I'm not a punk rocker. I don't have punk music. Maybe I have some punk characteristics about me. Did I say that properly? Yeah. Yeah, maybe I have some punk characteristics about me, but I don't walk around calling myself punk. It's more punk to tell people you're not punk than to sit there and say that you are punk.
She literally just wanted to rock out. And you know what? The people loved it. This song specifically stands out to be a core childhood memory for me. The Bones Tour, which was the world tour for this record, was my very first concert ever at 8 years old. I remember anxiously twiddling my thumbs while my mom and her friends' kids ate spaghetti bolognese at an overpriced restaurant outside the Singapore Indoor Stadium before the concert. There was this knot of nervous excitement in my stomach. I was wearing a black market tour tee that was cut up because it was too big for me, bought at a night market in Bangkok, paired with camo cargo shorts and brown Croc flip-flops. Girl, ain't that a vision. And I had never been more excited for anything in my life. When I heard that opening guitar riff of He Wasn't, that's when I truly became a pop aficionado. I'm so serious. Seeing Avril in concert for this record at that age was so inexplicably formative for me. It was the most magical night. Regardless, this song rocked. Fall to Pieces, however, is a moment of quiet vulnerability, some of her best and least try-hard deep songwriting. It builds off of Let Go's twangy deep cut highlight, Things I'll Never Say, one of my favorite Avril Lavigne songs of all time. Back then, when it came to love on Things I'll Never Say, the younger Avril's feelings were so intense that she clammed up entirely. She cannot drop her act and surrender to love. Here are some of the lyrics from Things I'll Never Say. What's wrong with my tongue? The words keep slipping away. I stutter and stumble, like I've got nothing to say. This would be it if the feral hormonal agony of growing pains were a song. In the first verse, she's blushing, tugging at her hair, yanking on her clothes, so physically uncomfortable in herself and scared of her own heart that she is frenetic, practically clawing her skin off and combusting, rather than communicating what's really going on in her mind to the object of her affection. And what's going on in that mind of hers? In the chorus, she tells us, I want to see you go down on one knee, marry me today, conservative queen. Yes, I'm wishing my life away with these things that I'll simply never say. As usual, Avril's angst stems from a hunger for intimacy, which when experienced for the first time is so immersive that it seems insurmountable, rendering the novice feeler myopic and brooding. Fall to Pieces goes further than Things I'll Never Say. Here, Avril is ready to show herself fully, without childish indignance. I want to know who you are. I want to know where to start. I want to know what this means. I want to know how you feel. And I want to know what's real. I want to know everything. It's funny to really parse the lyrics on this record. The instrumentals are so dirty and dark and intense that they kind of mask the chastity of the words. On Don't Tell Me, she's saying she's not a one-night stand. My Happy Ending is also actually very Taylor Swift coded in that it has a focus on fairy tales falling apart, and on Fall to Pieces, she's simply yearning to feel tethered to someone and can't find the means to express herself through unsung words. There really is nothing confrontational, aggressive, countercultural, nor even particularly progressive about this album or any of Avril Lavigne's work. And again, that's not a knock. I'm a champion of meeting artists where they are, and this record served a very specific purpose. There are even moments here when Avril approaches something like a big sister. On Who Knows, she says, do what you do, just keep on laughing. And on Freak Out, she's instructing her followers to walk around with their hands in the air, and if necessary, to just freak out and then let it go. This record also contains some of her best vocal performances. Together, the second track on this album and a deep cut highlight really displays her range. Her voice is leaping up and down between the verses and the choruses. The lyrics are beautiful and kind of simple here too. This very simple couplet really stuck out to me when I was looking at the lyrics again. When I'm alone, I feel so much better, but when I'm around you, I don't feel together. I'd say the most disturbed the album gets is on the opening track, Take Me Away. Maybe her darkest construction ever, and an incredible way to start the vibe shift between the brighter angst of Let Go and the moodier rage of Under My Skin. This delicious, filthy guitar lick brings us right into a very compelling opening line.
I cannot find a way to describe it.
It's there, deep inside. All I do is hide. This song is kind of about going crazy. There's a humidity to it, a sense of isolation that swells as the song careens towards its climax. I loved the song so much as a kid. I rocked out to it. Another deep cut highlight is the bratty, I always get what I want. Just like He Wasn't, this is a very quintessentially Avril Lavigne, and maybe the closest thing to a real moment of punk female rage. This is her very nearly screaming about always getting what she wants, basically. It's a tantrum in song form. Brava. Let's talk about the album artwork, because I'm sorry, but this is the blueprint for so many of your pop rock indie girlies of today's day and age. In fact, I feel this era and Let Go definitely spawned a generation of Avril imitators or inspiration takers. Ashley Simpson and Kelly Clarkson both released albums this year, Autobiography and Breakaway, that were certainly inspired by Avril and borrowed visuals from her too. There also, I think, would be no modern day Paramore without Avril. Christina Aguilera definitely had a go at rocking like Avril. Hilary Duff did an even more tame imitation of angst. And Lindsay Lohan's music career as it started was definitely Avril Lavigne light. She was the blueprint. It's actually super hard to get any information about who even took the pictures of this album art, but they are, of course, Gorgina. And as usual, Avril styled herself. She's wearing simple corset tank tops, frilly skirts, and combat boots. The hair is more obviously styled, and thank God it has some volume in it, finally. The makeup is more carefully touched up, and the cover itself is just an iconic side profile ghostly image of her with that signature red X, and this became the motif for the entire era. And Avril was really good, actually, at doing eras visually for her first 3 records. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that Under My Skin was shot during or around the My Happy Ending music video. She's definitely wearing that red tutu. But yes, this imagery inspired so many of us to be the goth punk ragers we definitely weren't. Me, literally right now. The font and graphic design were kind of like graffiti inspired. There was a very polished DIY edge to it that again perfectly posits Avril at the intersection between a genuine counterculture and commercial dominance. Speaking of, Under My Skin was a rip-roaring success commercially. It was her first #1 debut, which Let Go didn't manage even with bigger singles, selling 380,000 pure physical units in its first week. It sold over 8 million copies worldwide to date, a top 10 bestseller from 2004 alone. All 3 singles from Under My Skin, Nobody's Home, My Happy Ending, and Don't Tell Me are in her top 10 singles of all time, with My Happy Ending at the highest at number 4. I'm not even really going to get into the critical reviews of this album because I felt they were unbelievably unfair and just refused to engage seriously with this work. They truly came from a place of misogyny. No one believed it was her actually making these songs, and even if it was her, well, it was bad anyway, so who cares? Here's what an old white man wrote about this record for The Guardian. This truly makes me want to tear my hair out. Nearly everyone under the age of 15 appears to have swallowed the official line on Lavigne that she is an authentic symbol of punk rebellion, a scowling refusenik antidote to manufactured production line pop. Everyone else is perplexed, largely because she could be no more obviously manufactured if she had a barcode and a telephone number for customer services taped to her forehead. I'm gonna find that man, and I'm gonna do something bad to him. This record is well overdue a re-examination, and I hope to God that I have done justice to it for you today. If you like this video, make sure to leave me a comment and let me know what your favorite song from Under My Skin was. I really wanna have a kiki in the comments below. Tell me about your memories that you have with Avril Lavigne. I shared one with you about my first concert. What songs did you really connect with? Did you have any moments of pretending to be homeless in your room? I would love to reminisce with you in the comments below, so let me know, and make sure to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.